This is Calm AF, a podcast for humans who are hard on themselves. A podcast for the overthinkers, people pleasers, perfectionists, and overachievers. I'm Kristen Finch, and I'm going to teach you how to quiet that incessant negative chatter in your head. Because you know what a person with a calm mind can do? Anything they want. Grab your coffee, gorgeous soul, because today's the day you get Calm AF. Hello. Welcome back to Calm AF. We are on episode 299. Today, we are talking about, we're in part 2 of a 2-part series. How this chronic dysregulation, chronic stress, chronically unaligned with calm, how that is fucking up your life. Part 2. There's 2 parts because there's so many ways, which is unfortunate because most of us as humans living in a human world that we are, most of us are spending most of our time in chronic dysregulation with a nervous system that is always maybe not completely dysregulated. But when I talk about that Calm AF scale of like -10 up to +10, and we talk about that Calm AF sweet spot being somewhere in the middle between like -3, -2, up to +2, +3. That area we call regulated. Sometimes we call it in groups, we call it regulated-ish, because listen, it's not realistic to live in a world where you are just constantly feeling just like constant bliss and inner peace. Like, it's just, I think if we can get into that space more often, it's great, but we're not going to walk around life. You have a human brain, and unless you can somehow detach your human brain and your nervous system, always kind of like triggering each other, I think it's pretty unrealistic to think you're going to spend all of your time at 0, that perfectly balanced Calm AF. But we are talking about being regulated-ish enough so that maybe you are at a, +2 or a +3 on the scale. So you're kind of up in that hypervigilant side of the scale, but you're still able to be regulated enough to get into that place of awareness. You're regulated enough to be able to access your higher level thinking so that you can pull yourself back or keep yourself in that regulated space, or vice versa. If you're kind of underregulated, hypovigilant-ish, like you're at a -2, -3, like that, we're still going to be able to access more of the ability to pause, more of the ability to move back up into our higher level thinking when we're in that ish area. But I would say most of us are spending our lives more around the 4 to 5, either -4, 5 or +4, 5 or higher. Because again, we haven't been taught how to regulate our nervous system. We have spent most of our life thinking that our feelings are coming from outside of us and from other people and from our circumstances, and that we don't really have control over that. We think we need to control our external world instead of being in control of ourselves, which is truly the only thing you have control over: your thoughts, your feelings, your regulated state. So because of that, I think a lot of us see kind of in part 1, I talked about the physical ways that chronic dysregulation is really showing up, how it's manifesting physically in your body. So things like poor digestion, a lowered immune system, you keep getting sick, you can't seem to get over it, or some weird things keep popping up. Your hormones, right? Everything is absolutely impacted by your nervous system being out of whack, being either hypervigilant or hypovigilant. So that's what we've been talking about. That's what we talked about last week: poor sleep, hormonal imbalances, the weakened immune system. The bottom line of last week's episode was that a chronically dysregulated nervous system can and probably is having some sort of impact. Maybe a mild impact, maybe a profound impact on your physical health. This week, we're going to shift into our focus on mental, emotional, and social implications, how it manifests mentally, emotionally, socially when you have chronic dysregulation, when you spend the majority of your time hypervigilantly scanning the world for danger or hypovigilantly shut down because you're too exhausted. Okay? It's important to understand that your nervous system doesn't just affect your body, right? It controls everything, so it plays a crucial role in your mental well-being, in your emotional well-being. Okay, I want to jump right in to the content today, but before I do, I have a quick announcement. Calm AF Life enrollment is open for just a few more weeks before we are pausing it for a few months. Most likely enrollment will open back again late fall of 2024 or early 2025. Calm AF Life is the program that I work with you in small groups, helping you individually really figure out for you what stories you need to unlearn, how to feel your feelings, how to rewire your thoughts in a small, direct way. You can learn a lot on this podcast, but it's very, very different when you and I are in the room together and you're able to ask me specific questions, or you're able to kind of learn how other people are navigating some of the things that you're struggling with in a different way than you usually have, right? In a Calm AF way. So if you are wanting that level of support, make sure that you are getting into Calm AF Life before we close enrollment in a few weeks. All right, let's dive into the different ways, the mental, emotional, social, physiological, psychological ways that a chronically dysregulated nervous system is impacting your life. See if you can recognize some of these things in yourself. So, difficulty concentrating, focusing, staying on task. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, I've noticed, there seems to be a surge in people being diagnosed with ADHD. And I was diagnosed with ADHD like 25 years ago. Oh my gosh. I didn't think it was that long. But so I am not for 1 minute. If you feel like maybe you have ADHD or you are newly diagnosed, I am not suggesting that it's not real. It's not a real diagnosis. It's not an accurate diagnosis. Here is what I'm saying, however, is I believe that so much of this difficulty with really being able to pay attention has a lot to do with our nervous system regulation. When you're in a chronic state of hypervigilance, where you're always scanning the world for what could go wrong, or hypovigilance, where you're shut down and you can't pay attention because you just don't have the energy, then there is no way you're fully accessing your neocortex. And this is the part of the brain that helps you with things like focus and attention and concentration, along with things like helping you think logically and problem solve. Right? If your attention is always scanning the world for what could go wrong, what you should be doing that you're not doing, what other people should be doing that they're not doing, if your attention is always in a million different places, it's really hard to concentrate. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have ADHD in a regulated state, but what I do know for sure as a person with this diagnosis is it's much easier. There is a definite way to improve your concentration and your focus when you are in a regulated state in your nervous system. 1,000% promise you that is true. You can still have attention issues. I definitely do. But it's way different when you are able to attend to things in a regulated state. So that's just one of the ways. And I hear this so much from people. Another way is that incessant negative chatter. If you have a little chatterbox in your brain that will not shut up, you're highly self-critical. If you feel like you are always kind of seeking other people's approval, you're a people pleaser, you want to look at your nervous system regulation. It's constantly looking for what's wrong. So it is not a great hype team, right? A dysregulated nervous system isn't like, you got this, you can do this, you don't have to worry about it, just show up and be yourself. It's not saying that to you. It is just constantly reminding you of all the ways you're not measuring up, all of the ways that you are not doing a good enough job, how you're not enough, you're too much, whatever it might mean. Incessant negative chatter is like amplified from a dysregulated nervous system. So again, we still have thoughts. We might still have incessant negative chatter in our minds, but with a regulated nervous system, we're like shutting the volume. We're turning the volume down on it. Mood swings. Mood swings. Why do we get in a place where we are just, from 1 minute I'm here and then the next minute I'm here? It's dysregulation. Why? Because you are reacting rather than reflecting. You are responding to triggers, like hyper impulsive reaction to a trigger before you even know what's happening. So you're going along, everything's okay, and a trigger shows up, and in a dysregulated state, what happens is that your fight-flight response goes into motion, right? It's like, okay, react, fight, flight, run, freeze, whatever you have to do. So of course, that's going to create mood swings. Brain fog. Okay, I feel like this is kind of self-explanatory. Being in a dysregulated state is exhausting. Being hypervigilant, exhausting. Being hypovigilant, exhausting. I know sometimes people are like, I shouldn't be tired. I'm not doing anything. Yes, you are. You are definitely doing something when your nervous system is like shut down, right? When we talked last week about the hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, those are meant for short bursts, not for long-term stress, not for chronic stress. So of course, your brain is foggy. It feels confused because you have a tired overall system. When your nervous system is always looking for danger, another way this shows up, another way this manifests is difficulty making decisions, right? If you're always looking for danger, every decision is going to be heavily questioned. When you are actually in a real true state of emergency and your brain just needs to react, like we're talking 10 on the Calm AF scale, like, or -10, right? Where you're just like playing dead, or you are like running or fighting for your life, then your brain is shut down so that you can just make intuitive decisions, right? Run, fight, freeze. But in this kind of like chronically dysregulated, but right in the middle place where you're not fully in an emergency, your brain is absolutely going to question every single decision because it's trying to keep you safe. But in actuality, what is it doing? Having a hard time making decisions, you're procrastinating. You aren't doing anything. It's keeping you stuck, not safe. Let's talk about some of the emotional and the psychological and the social ways that a chronically dysregulated nervous system is manifesting. Decreased resilience, first and foremost, right? It is hard to bounce back when you are so tired, when you're not just physically tired, your soul is tired, when you are constantly reacting or shutting down or going back and forth between the two. It is really hard to bounce back from that level of exhaustion. Chronic dysregulation makes you overwhelmed, which makes you less resilient. When something does show up, you're like, ugh, this again? You don't have a lot of resilience there. Difficulty controlling or accessing your emotions. Okay? I want you to think about physiologically or physically, I should say, how a dysregulated nervous system shows up as in regards to sleep. We talked about this last week. You don't sleep. You do not sleep as well when you are in a chronic dysregulated state. I don't even have to explain why, you know why. Now I want you to think how much harder it is to control your emotions when you are tired. And this is just one reason why, right? You cry easier, you're kind of weepier, you snap at everything, or you shut down. This is how you access your feelings when you're dysregulated all the time. And this chronic dysregulation causes this on a larger scale. And this doesn't change, right? Like you don't get better at controlling your own emotions or, feeling anger without like spilling into, rage, or feeling sadness without spilling down into like just complete despair. This doesn't change until you build your Calm AF skills, until you learn how to regulate your nervous system, how you do it intentionally and purposefully, so that you can be in your body when a feeling shows up. So when anger shows up, you can just be with it from a regulated state instead of a dysregulated state where you're going to run away or push it down or fight or whatever you need to do. Like, you can be angry and Calm AF so that you can know what to do next. That's something we talk a lot about in Calm AF Life. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it here. Procrastination. Why would a chronically dysregulated nervous system be the cause of procrastination? Well, what is a dysregulated nervous system always trying to do? It's trying to avoid anything that will make you feel bad, right? Your nervous system is trying to keep you safe from like non-preferred feelings. So when we procrastinate, what does that mean? We're putting something off. We're not getting started. Listen, if you never start, you can't fail, right? If you never get started on a project, you're not going to fail, and you're not going to have to deal with how it feels to fail. Because you might fail if you start something new, right? Your nervous system is like, this is going to prevent shame or embarrassment. Or sometimes not starting a project means that your negative chatter won't have the chance to criticize you. If I never give it a chance, well, then it's not going to show up. Right? But what happens when you're chronically procrastinating things? I think you're still having the same thoughts. You're still having the same feelings. It's just now it's at a different level. It's like, see, you never do what you say you're going to do. It's your dysregulated nervous system. It's trying to avoid you not feeling safe. If you struggle with boundaries, chronic dysregulation. If you emotionally eat, if you numb out in any ways, maybe you're a doom scroller, maybe you find yourself on the couch at night instead of like actual resting, instead of like actually taking care of yourself at the end of the night, you're like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to pull out this screen, I'm going to stare at it, and I'm just going to scroll. And what's that going to do, right? That's my self-care. It's not self-care. It is not self-care. Okay? I'm sorry. It's not. It is chronic dysregulation trying to avoid the thoughts and the feelings that come from a dysregulated system, right? Any sort of numbing out, doom scrolling, even disassociating. This is where it's coming from. This is where it's coming from. It's not even about, it has very, very little to do with willpower. If you're eating too much at night or drinking too many glasses of wine, whatever it is whatever behavior that you don't like, nervous system. Also isolation. Okay, isolating from people. A lot of times I see this where when we are trying to avoid something because we're afraid of this dysregulation, instead of like taking productive action, we isolate. So that's for me one of my biggest signs that I am kind of in that hypovigilant place is if I notice I'm isolating. Okay. That's a lot of things that you can probably relate to, a lot of them. And it might seem like everything traces back to a dysregulated nervous system because it does. Okay. The nervous system is like the beginning of everything that we do. It's the foundational piece. So I'm not saying it's the only thing, but it is the foundational piece. A chronically dysregulated nervous system will negatively impact every aspect of your life. Every aspect. It just does. It can't not. Between what I talked about last week with how it physically impacts your body and what we talked about today, the way it affects your mind, your emotions, your spirit, your soul. Okay? So if you want to improve your physical health, if you want to improve your relationships, if you want to improve your mental health, if you want to stop numbing out, if you want to stop overeating, if you want to stop being so busy that you don't have any time for yourself ever, and it feels like every day is like Groundhog Day. If you want to make these changes, if you want to stop procrastinating, if you want to quiet, just turn down the volume on that incessant negative chatter, where do you start? Nervous system first. That's the golden rule of Calm AF, remember? Nervous system first. Physically, if you want to improve, if you're nauseous all the time, if you feel like, you're always getting sick or you just can't seem to find your energy, nervous system first. Not saying it's the only factor, but it really, really makes sense to address your nervous system before you're trying to change your willpower or stop overeating or, you need to make sure you're doing these things, making those changes from a regulated nervous system. It's going to make everything in your life easier, not easy, easier. And this doesn't happen overnight, but if you are actively, purposefully, intentionally, consistently practicing, getting into a regulated state, getting into that Calm AF energy, that sweet spot between -3 and +3 on the scale every day, just like you work out your body, just like you have to eat and drink water every day, this is a thing that you need to be practicing every single day. If you do it, you will feel better. Things will feel easier. Things will feel less overwhelming. You will start feeling like you have more control over your feelings. You will feel less triggered in general. Nervous system first. Do whatever you have to do to put this as a practice in your everyday life. All right? All right, gorgeous soul. If you want my help with it, my direct help, like me knowing you, answering your direct questions, Calm AF Life. I will see you next week for episode 300. Can you believe it? All right, I will see you next time. Love you so much. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. And before you go, one more thing. So as you know, I am slightly obsessed with helping as many humans tap into their Calm AF-ness as possible. So if this podcast has helped you, would you please leave a review, make sure you're subscribed, and share it with your friends. Also, make sure you head on over to KristenFinch.com to see how you can work with me. You can sign up for my emails and get any other goodies I have available. Until next week, I love you so much. I am so grateful that you're here. I'll see you next time.